Back with another episode of Chef's Kiss. It's Pete and John. It is the middle of the summer. It is fucking hot. John, most overrated season, summer, hands down. Not a fan of it. I don't want to go outside. I feel like I'm melting everywhere I go. I'm fat. Fat people hate being hot and sweating. As a former fat person, John, I'm sure you can attest to that as well. But summer, everyone thinks they love it, but once you graduate school, there's no point in having summer. Summer was great when I didn't have school for 3 months. After that, I don't need it.
So yes, as a former fat person, I hated summer for a variety of reasons. One, you have to take your shirt off. No fat guy ever wants to take the shirt off. Two, you sweat a lot doing menial tasks. So never a fan of summer. Even when I've gotten in better shape, it's still really hot, and one of my biggest pet peeves is just walking around, like going to the grocery store, doing normal tasks, and sweating. It is the worst feeling in the world. You feel like you have to take a shower every time. My favorite season is fall. I think that's you and I both planned our weddings. I think we have the same wedding date, October 5th, and so fall is hands down my favorite because it's cooler. It's not freezing cold like we have here in Chicago. Fall is hands down the best season. Summer, way too hot, especially now when it's getting crazy hot.
I run through a lot of shorts, John, because I don't wear underwear. I just find them pretty confining. Unless
you never wear underwear?
If I work from home. Let's be honest here. I'm lucky.
I work from home too, and yeah, I wear underwear.
Nah, not a fan of underwear, not a fan of socks. I'll wear underwear if I wear jeans or if I go golfing or something real nice short.
So what do you gold? Do you gold bond it? What do you do?
Just keep it nice and tight. Keep them short and curly, and kind of just takes care of itself.
Oh, good for you.
It's the waistband. The waistband is what I was saying. I go through so many shorts because that's where all the sweat sits from my belly, and then it just sits in that little waistband. So I'll take these off, and I'll sniff the waistband. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. Sometimes you can stretch a pair of shorts.
Do you have to sniff the waistband, though? Why do you sniff the waistband?
Because I have a problem. I don't know.
That's something a fat person does.
Yeah. Just sniff it.
I used to
sniff clothes to see if how much life it's got left. Can
I remember your shirt out? I remember when I was much fatter, and when you're fat, this is a great conversation. I could talk about this we could easily do a 3-hour pod on being fat.
Yeah. A dissertation.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was fat, one of the worst parts, especially in the summertime, was my fat rolls. Mm-hmm. When it's sticky out, you get those lines on your shirt, so it's so clear where your fat rolls. I would get 3. 1, 2, 3. Just the patented 3 fat roll, and then you get the sweat line, 3 lines across. Mm-hmm. So you're almost like, I'd rather just be doing physical activity so my whole shirt is drenched so no one sees that I clearly have 3 lines across. But then again, you're fat. Everyone knows it.
Oh, under boob sweat. Wow, you really got a nice set of titties.
Exactly, that too. That's the worst. That's when you're.
I'm just...
Yeah. Under boob sweat is like when you're not crunched over. That just happens.
Right, when you're hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've just kind of hit my point already.
Yeah. Freshman swimming was the worst. Did you have to do that in high school? You had to do that in high school, right?
I wasn't fat in high school.
Not only was I fat in high school, I was hairy. Yeah. So imagine you're 14. Not only are you fat, you have hair all over your body and all over your back.
Sure, but you can argue that it covers up a little bit more. Just like when I justify tan fat is always better than pale fat. So it's if I'm at least tan, it's ooh, it looks a little bit better.
Yeah, but you can't at 14. You're either fat or you're hairy. You can't be both. And I was definitely both. Remember those steel benches that you had to sit on? Do you remember that?
In the pool room, right?
Yeah, just waiting, and you had to sit, so my belly would be hanging over. I would just be like, God, I hate this so much. Part of me was like, maybe I'll drown Like, we're doing water polo. I can't tread water.
Dude,
maybe,
we had
maybe
one
I'll
kid
just
in a
drown.
class, John. He was so fat, and I'm not even joking. So you know how muscle sinks, but fat floats. We had a test, and we all had to tread water. This motherfucker sat there like a seal, John, like this, and didn't move. He was just floating, and they're just like, Colin, you got to move, bud. You got to do something. And he's just sitting there
don't call Colin out. Come on.
Just floating. I thought that was so funny. He just sat there, just fat floating, like a little seal with his head popped out. Good for that kid.
I did think long and hard about possibly wearing a T-shirt, and I was like, I can't.
That's even worse. You got to.
It's worse. That's what I thought. I was like, even at 14, I knew. I was like, this is worse.
Yeah. Anyway,
sorry.
next trip down memory lane, right?
Yeah, I could talk about that forever.
Okay, John. Speaking of, let's go with the Cubs. The Cubs had a rough week. They've been having a rough time here.
Rough year.
This is one of the most juvenile things I've seen, John. And this is something I've done as a young kid. In Little League, I've had my father beat me when I got home. I threw my catcher's gear one time. I threw a fit because I popped out, and you look like a real spoiled little kid, and your dad beats your ass when you get home. The Cubs, Colten Brewer, did something like he broke his hand, his non-pitching hand, because he punched the wall in the dugout after he got lit up. This is, when you're a professional athlete, that's obviously just not something you can do. Questions I have for you, Craig Counsell. What are you doing? You're the highest paid manager in baseball. The Cubs started the season 17-9. Cubs are now 24-40, worst team in the NL Central. 6 games behind the third wild card spot with 7 teams in front of them. Talk to me about like this from what you see from Colten Brewer. He got lit up. He had a very bad outing, but then you multiply that and go ahead and break your hand.
Well, he hasn't been good in general. Also, too, like. I remember, like, in high school and in college, people like, if you're going to punch something or whatever, use your non-pitching hand. But that doesn't work either because you still can't play if you have a broken hand. So never a good idea. Same thing. Like, I pitched, in high school and, and in college. And I remember at a young age, like maybe middle school, like I'm very competitive and I can get very intense, but as a pitcher, you just can't do it. Like, as a hitter, you can't show any emotion. You just can't. If you really, really have to keep it. Honestly, like I credit, like, just because I happen to pitch, I credit like that helping me harness my emotions at a young age, like just in general, because you just can't do that. And I remember my dad lighting me up, just being like, my dad's not a huge baseball guy, but he even knows. He goes, you pitched terrible, but the other team knew that you were mad that you weren't getting the strike calls, and so you can't do that. You never can do that. And losing your cool as a pitcher is the worst because the hitters can smell it, and then the defense behind you is like, all right, this guy's about to get lit up, or he's going to walk everybody. Either way, it isn't good. So that's stupid, obviously. As far as the Cubs go, this is not Craig Counsell's fault.
Sure.
And I think this is not his fault at all. People in Chicago too, want a emotional manager. They want Mike Ditka, 1985 Bears, like yelling at players.
Steele.
Yeah, first of all, baseball isn't like that. Second of all, Craig Counsell isn't like that. So you have a lot of meathead fans being like, why doesn't Counsell get thrown out? That doesn't make you a better team. That doesn't explain how you're dead last in OPS. It doesn't explain how you've made the most outs on the base path. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't... The underperformance of Dansby Swanson, the underperformance of Nico Horner, the underperformance of Cody Bellinger, the underperformance of Christopher Morel, these projections.
You're the head of that team. I'm not expecting you to be yelling. Like, if you don't want to show emotion, that's totally fine, but somebody has to take the helm of the team. And we saw it from Justin Steele when he was yelling, let's go, show some emotion. Like, he got excited, and Cubs fans were excited to see that. Oh, yeah,
that's
finally
great.
Emotion. And
Yes,
I understand
absolutely.
it doesn't have to come in that form, but as the leader of the team, you got to do something. Work with your hitting coach. Like we haven't.
Well, we don't know what he's doing behind closed doors. This is not on council. If you're going to put this on anyone, this is the front office. This is Jed. This is whatever Tom Ricketts, if he wasn't letting him spend money to get a guy who slugs, a superstar, a guy who slugs, and high velocity pitchers who miss bats. The Cubs did not want to pay for slug, so they didn't do it, and that shows. And then they also didn't want to pay for pitchers who miss bats because they don't strike out a lot of hitters, and they don't have a lot of bull. Now, they've had a lot of injuries, but so has everyone. You're going to talk about the Phillies in a second. Some of their best hitters are hurt. So, again, in baseball, I think the manager matters the least as opposed to football, where I think the head coach and the quarterback matter the most. In the NBA, it's the players that matter the most. You got a couple of superstars. In baseball, it's the front office. The manager matters the least, but you have to have talent. You have to have guys that hit the ball over the fence. You have to have guys who slug. And in today's game, you have to have guys who miss bats. The Cubs don't slug, nor do the Cubs have pitchers who miss bats. Also, their defense isn't very good, or not as good as they had projected. So if this is on anybody, it's on Jed for either miscalculating his projections on Morel and Bellinger and the lack of slug, and their unwillingness to add. Yes, you've added a manager. Great. Like, that's awesome. Craig Counsell's a really good manager. But you can be the best manager in the world, and if you don't have players who produce, you're going to lose a lot of ball games. And that's what's happening. I think a bad manager can negatively affect a team, but if you have a shitty roster and guys who can't slug or strike people out, you're not going to win, especially in today's game.
I think Cubs fans got their hopes up after starting 17-9. Then they go 24-40. So that hot start, even dealing with injuries, like we saw, everybody, that was
injuries is an excuse. Everybody's hurt. Everybody gets hurt.
They overcame that at the beginning of the season. They were 17-9 with all those injuries in the first season of the month, and they weathered that storm and performed well. And it's like, oh, great, okay, now everyone comes back healthy, and guys are getting lit up, and then they go 24-40 after that. So, Jen, my proposal for this issue we were talking about with Colten Brewer is putting a punching bag in the dugout. This has been something that's been discussed. It's like a controlled thing where if you want to let out your aggression, maybe you don't have to put it in the dugout, but you put it in the tunnel or something like that to where guys can, in the right way, get that aggression out. I think that's a brilliant idea, as opposed to taking bats and hitting coolers or punching a wall. Here's the thing that you can go and hit. It's soft and, kind of get your emotion out.
It's a really smart idea.
Nice.
Maybe not a punching bag because it goes back and forth, but one of those punching dummies that's kind of stagnant.
Okay.
And you could have fun with it too, like put a face on it or whatever, someone that everybody hates or whatever. There you go. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm all for that. Because you're right. There's so many things in the dugout that are not soft. Yeah. But again, you got to control your emotions. And you especially if you're a pitcher. How embarrassing is it?
And this isn't controlling your emotions on the field either, John. This is off. This is you coming out, you're going in the dugout, and now it's just you by yourself, and then you throw a tantrum, right? And now
it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to the fans. It's also embarrassing, too. Like, let's say the Cubs don't want to retain him and DFA him or whatever. Another team's going to see that. They're going to be like, do we really want this guy who can't control his emotions? Or, it's just not a good look, especially as a pitcher. Nobody wants to see that.
I hear you. Phillies, John, opposite end of the spectrum, the Philadelphia Phillies. 7 All-Stars, almost close to a record.
They're so
8
good.
For one team. There should have been an 8th, in my opinion. Christopher Sanchez was snubbed. I mean, he absolutely had a case as well. 2.96 ERA, 82 strikeouts in 17 games. So I mean, it looks really good for them, dude. Here's my point for this. I brought this up, wanted to talk to you about this. I feel like there is some sort, okay? Obviously, the better your team is, the more all-stars you can have, the better fan base, because we know it's a fan vote. So it's not necessarily the most talented. Every team needs to be represented, which is another thing I want to talk about just right after this. Remind me, every team being represented. But there's some correlation between the number of players you have in the All-Star game and World Series winners. Now walk with me here. 2015, okay? You got Salvador Perez, Alcides Escobar, Lorenzo Cain, Alex Gordon, Calvin Herrera, Wade Davis, 6 guys. And then there was also Mike Moustakas was like one of the last ones. So that's 7 guys in 2015. Royals win the World Series. Next year, Chicago Cubs, Rizzo, Zobrist, Bryant, Russell, Fowler, Arrieta, Lester. Cubs go on to win the World Series. Phillies have the best record in baseball, 58-32, all while having injuries. Harper, Schwarber, Realmuto, Turner, Turnbull, Walker. I think there's some kind of correlation somewhere in there, obviously. And I know the better your team is, the fan base and all those players, but there's something about it, man. It feels really good around here. They have a big series coming up with the Dodgers starting tomorrow. I will be at that game. I will be at that game. Schwarber should be possibly back. Harper will either be back or come back a couple days after that. So it's going to be a good measuring stick to where they stack up against the Dodgers in the NL.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about. So I watched that series with Philly against the Cubs, and Turner just absolutely raked. For a guy that size, it's just his power. It's just incredible. It's one of the cool things about baseball. It's just one of the cool things about baseball. Like, no matter your size, you can be tall, skinny, heavy set, whatever. You short, tall, it doesn't matter. Like Trey Turner's 6 foot, 6'1", $185. Just, crushing balls deep to left center. I'm talking 420, 430. He was incredible. And he's unbelievably fast, super light in his feet. But again, this goes back to Dave Dombrowski. Dave Dombrowski paid for Slug, paid Schwarber, certainly paid Harper.
Top 4, payroll in baseball.
Realmuto, paid Turner. These are guys that slug. Home runs, extra base hits. Castellanos is heating up. It matters. Having slug in your lineup matters. I think everyone saw the Diamondbacks last year, and they're like, oh, we can replicate that. But they have very specific players. Not everybody can replicate what the Diamondbacks are able to do. You know what I mean? I think they're a bit of an outlier. So see that and to see it as a blueprint,
again, right?
Exactly. To see that as a blueprint, be like, oh, this is the new blueprint of the expanded playoffs. We just need to get in. We need guys that can run, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, if you're relying on defense, okay, that's one thing. But your defense isn't good. Dansby Swanson hasn't been a great defender this year. You don't strike people out. Okay, so you need to steal bases. Yet you've made the most outs on the base paths. Now, if you want to hammer Counsell for anything, you can hammer him for that. The lack of attention to detail as far as making the most outs on the base pass. I think part of that is because they don't slug and they're trying to force the issue. But again, some of these things that they're asking guys to do, a lot of these guys are making outs on the base pass because they're trying to be over aggressive, because they're trying to steal bases like the Diamondbacks last year, and they're not built like it. The Diamondbacks worked last year because they built a team off that. Corbin Carroll, this was a part of their blueprint. That guy can hit, he can slug, he can also steal bases. Alec Thomas, these types of guys. The Cubs don't have players like that. They just don't. So that is a misstep from the front office. I'm going to make our team into what the Diamondbacks were last year, but the players that we have can't do what the Diamondbacks do. You know what I mean? So therefore, how do you win in this game? You strike out people, you hit home runs, and the Cubs do neither. So credit to Dave Dombrowski. The Phillies get all the credit in the world, and they deserve it. Because their front office is faithful. You have to, especially now, analytics are out. Everyone has data on every player.
Money
Now you have to spend money.
And it doesn't guarantee wins, but you have to spend money in order to be competitive. Just like in football, we talked about you have to be a top 10 quarterback in order to win. Sure, there's going to be outliers and different kind of ways to win, but historically, overall, house advantage, have to spend money.
100%, dude. Absolutely. Especially now, the analytics revolution's over. Everyone has data on everything. Everyone knows how much spin you can put on a ball, like your swing plane. Everyone knows that, and everyone's trying to exploit it. It just depends on if you can execute it or not. But the teams that are the top are the teams that have spent the most money. The Dodgers, the Yankees, the Phillies. You see, there's a correlation here. It's the team that spends the most money and spends specifically on slug and guys who miss bats.
John, one thing we didn't address, I just wanted to give a round of applause. First was Justin Steele's first complete game shutout. That's awesome. Number one. Number two is All-Star Mike Imanaga II, a.k.a. Shota Imanaga. Great job, guys.
That was it. That was it. If Steele didn't get hurt, I think he would have been on it.
That was his first win since like September.
Yeah, he's like 1-3, or he's like 2-3 or something. Yeah, he has like so many no decisions because the team sucks, and the bullpen has blown like I think 7 or 6 of his last 9 starts or something. I mean, it's crazy how bad the bullpen is. That's the other thing too. Like, if you're not gonna slug, you need to have a good bullpen. Can't have a bad bullpen and not slug and make the most outs on the base pass. It's one of the reasons they're the third worst.
Can't be fat and hairy. It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah, you got to pick one or the other. And the Cubs are all kinds of terrible.
They're pulling a 17-year-old, 14-year-old John Aloja.
You made a good point too. You talked about the 2015 All-Star game, the correlation of All-Stars and winning the World Series. You made a good point. The 2016 All-Star game, pretty much the entire infield was Cubs. Rizzo at first, Zobrist at second, Bryant at third. Aston Russell is short, and then the outfielder Dexter Fowler, and then starting pitchers Arrieta and Lester. So you might have something there.
Thank you. There's something there, obviously. So we'll go from All-Star game to Home Run Derby, John. It's new rules here.
Explain the new rules.
New format. I'll do this quickly. New format. Yeah. First round. All 8 players are going to get 3 minutes or 40 pitches, whichever comes first, plus 1 timeout. The 4 leading home run hitters advance. So there's no bracket. It's just whoever's the top 4 are. Ties are broken by using the longest home run distance. After the initial 3 minutes or 40 pitches, each player gets 3 bonus outs, where they will continue hitting until 3 outs are recorded. Hitters can earn a 4th bonus out with a 425-foot homer in bonus time. This gives anyone who is trailing a chance to catch up because they can continue hitting homers in bonus time until they run out of outs. Then there's the semifinals and the finals. So it goes, a little more different rules and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not super fan of it. I liked, John, remember when Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and Josh Hamilton, when you had 10 outs, right? It was just 10 outs. Just throw the ball, hit them as long as you can until you got 10 outs. Then they put the clock on it. That's my favorite iteration of Home Run Derby.
Me too. I like the clock a lot.
So I don't know. I guess we'll see how it goes. I'm going to watch it regardless. I don't know how this kind of enhances the experience, if you will. When the ball had to drop and hit the ground before the pitcher could throw it again, and we saw Bryce Harper's dad starting to pepper him in there when he won the Home Run Derby. He was starting to pepper him like, this ball hasn't even landed yet, bro. And no one's really enforcing that. So,
dude, speaking of Bryce Harper's dad, he looks like a beast. Like, I would not mess with that dude.
Yeah, definitely. I think
like he looks like a very intense guy.
I think he's a blue collar guy.
Yeah, like when I saw his dad, I was like, oh, that tracks. That's definitely Bryce Harper's dad. Yeah.
That's who he grew up to be.
I'm not a huge fan of the new rules. I'll watch it. My favorite iteration was the clock, so people couldn't take their time and towel off and drink Gatorade. Like that stuff was boring. Like I like that you get a timeout, but like this other stuff, just 10 outs, right. Time clock, hit the ball,
And go.
Let's go. Yeah.
So we only have half of the field right now. We have Gunnar Henderson with the Orioles, who currently has 27 home runs. Pete Alonso, the hardo, John, 18 home runs. See if he can get his third.
This is his World Series.
It is, yes. Alec Boehm with the Phillies. If this was a doubles contest, I'd put my money on Alec Boehm.
Yeah, why? I don't understand why he's in it. Mm-hmm. That makes is Aaron Judge is in it, right, or no?
No one's confirmed.
Yeah, see, Aaron Judge should be in it. Like, that's the other thing too. Like, after the first half, like that year, your top 4 leaders in home runs should have to be in it. Should be mandated. Because that's what everyone wants to see, and he's a huge star.
So then, what do you do when Shohei Shohei's leading and?
You put in Shohei, you put in Judge. Those are the 2 most popular franchises right now. The 2 best players. Like, they both should be in.
Right.
Like, guaranteed. And then you could go down. Okay, Gunnar Henderson. All right, he's got a lot. Put him in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But
you want to put guys who have a lot of home runs, but you also want to put in stars. Shohei and Aaron Judge are stars, and you don't have a ton of them in Major League Baseball. You just don't. I think that's a problem that they have overall. That Major League Baseball doesn't have a lot of stars. They add like the NBA or the NFL. And if you're going to have an all-star game, put your stars in the home run derby, especially the ones that lead the league in home runs.
Sure, but if you're in a pennant race, the front offices are thrilled if their players aren't participating in it. It's a lose-lose. You don't get anything if you win, and you just have opportunity to get hurt or winded or whatever. Because from the players that have done it before, they said it's very taxing on your body. It takes a couple days to recover, and then you're right back at it after the All-Star break. So I don't know.
I'm sure it is, but this is an entertainment product. Right. Sure. You know what I mean?
As a whole, as the league, but if your team, your organization, it's like, well, you guys, we want to put Bryce Harper in, we want to put Schwarber.
But I think that's why you mandate it, because of course, like if I'm running the Yankees, if I'm Brian Cashman,
so then it's fair all around, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think it's mandated. They go, we'll debate on who can be in it, but the top 4 people leading in home runs in the first half, you're automatically in it, like. So front offices can't be like, actually, no, we want to sit him or whatever. It's like, no, that's not happening. Right. If you're not on the IL the day the last game before the All-Star game, like you're going. And also too, they got to watch for like people like doing that, being like, oh, he's injured, or just got to pull back or something like that.
Yeah, the phantom.
Yeah, right? Because at the end of the day, it's an entertainment product. You know what I mean? Like the best players are in the All-Star game in the NBA. No one cares about the Pro Bowl, but that's NFL is a contact sport. But you want, especially if you're Major League Baseball and have a star problem, you put them in the All-Star game. Well, those are your 2 biggest stars.
All-Star game, John. That's what we're going to talk about. The All-Star game it's already the best All-Star game in sports. NBA, NFL, just don't.
Because you have to play it for real. You can't half-ass a baseball game.
Right.
No, you can't. You can't be like, all right, I throw 98, but I'm going to throw like 75 now and just lob it. It's like, no. Yeah.
But, John, can't we have it mean something? I thought that was the coolest part of the All-Star game is when it meant home field advantage to the winner. I thought that was such a cool concept, and it really meant, like, players wanted to play in that, and it was very competitive, and it meant, like, NL versus AL. We're better than you, blah, blah, blah. And I think they should bring that back. I mean, I don't know why they got rid of it. It was kind of sad.
I think it's unfair. Like, I agree. It should mean something. I don't know if it should mean home field advantage in the World Series, because I liked that it meant something, but I didn't want that. So I think we just need to come up with a different. I do think there needs to be an incentive to win the game. I do think their head was in the right place with that. I don't think making home field advantage in the World Series is the right move, but you and I could come up with a better idea. Like I don't know,
constantly.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like you get like everyone gets a $5,000 bonus.
Draft compensation. Talk about the draft. For next
there you go. Because even if you're a team in the like if you're if you're an all-star and you're on the Tigers or something, or you're an all-star, you're on the A's, there would still be incentive for you to play well because it might benefit your team maybe in the draft or something like that.
That's what I wanted to say, John. The rule that every team needs to be represented. Do you agree or disagree? I think it's the stupidest thing. It's an all-star game. Everybody doesn't need to be represented.
It is stupid, but I get why they do it. I get it. You're representing 30 teams. You have to have a representative from each team.
I get it. John,
because the whole the Tigers aren't very good, but Tigers have a pretty big fan base. So if no Tigers are in, the All-Star game, whatever, even if they're a reserve, a Tigers fan is like, oh, Tyreek Skubal is maybe he'll pitch the first couple innings, or maybe he'll come in relief. Like either I'm a Detroit Tiger fan, maybe I'll tune in, and I think that's why. If you're an A's fan, Mason Miller, you're like, okay. Maybe he'll close it out. Like, I'm going to watch this whole game. It keeps people engaged. And so, is it dumb? Yes. But I get why they do it. I don't have a huge problem with that.
How about, what was it, last year when Elias Diaz, the catcher for the Rockies? I mean, this is what as soon as I said it was stupid, I thought about, I think he won MVP, right? Elias Diaz, he had a home run. He was the Rockies catcher. And he had the biggest hit in the All-Star game, and I don't know if he won MVP or I thought he did. But this guy out of nowhere, this guy that basically nobody knows unless you follow baseball very closely, becomes the All-Star game's MVP. So I guess those stories are pretty cool. Maybe I was wrong. I guess that was the first thing I just thought. I was like, well, what about last year when that happened? And then it's like, oh, he's the hero that nobody knows about.
Yeah, that was weird. I didn't even know who that was. I was not following the Rockies.
Right. John, last thing. Hawk Tuah reality show? You saw
Did we
this,
talk?
right?
Did we talk about Hawk Tuah?
We did.
No.
Yeah, and everybody
we did?
knows who it is. Yes. Well, we talked about
me explaining it to my wife.
We talked about it in a previous episode. I remember.
Okay.
But this girl,
my wife didn't know what it was.
A reality TV show now.
Well, she's got representation. I mean, since I lived out in LA for a bit, and I did improv and sketch comedy for a while, so I have a lot of actor friends that are out there and follow them on social media and Twitter and other people in the entertainment industry, and they're like, hey, I was a showrunner on four shows, or I ran this and I did this, but I can't get representation, but this Hawk Tuah girl gets representation. Like, is that fair? I'm like, no. But the entertainment industry is probably the least fair industry I could think of.
Yeah. No talent, no skill set. You said something that was mildly funny, and it went viral on the internet, and now this is just like, it's like that girl that was like, no Chick-fil-A sauce? You remember that girl?
Yeah.
It was like the Chick-fil-A girl.
Uh-huh.
You have no skill set, you have no talent, and now what? You're gonna have a TV show about what? You also have no personality. I don't know if you saw that little trailer that they cut, and she's like, "I'm from a small town, Tennessee."
I saw it.
My
yeah.
grandparent. It's just like,
I'm like,
boring, dude.
I'm
Nobody
like, why?
Why would we know about you? What is there?
That's the other thing too. Is she just gonna say Hawk Tuah every episode?
Right.
I don't get it. Like, I don't know how they're gonna get content from this. She can't be that interesting.
No, she's not at all. So I just don't understand how long this is going to go on for.
Also, like,
she's not that hot.
Do we have any shame anymore in this country? Like, is that something you really want to be known
we've been
for?
Making stupid people famous for a decade now.
I know but it's awful. It's awful. It's led to so many terrible, terrible things. Like, I would be bitterly ashamed if that was caught on camera. I certainly would want a reality show or milk it for everything it's got, especially something as embarrassing as that.
She worked at a spring factory. That was her job.
What's a spring factory? Like,
they make springs. Gotta come from somewhere. I'm not even joking. She worked at a spring factory. Just like they make springs.
I thought it was like something else. You're like, no. In small town Tennessee, they make springs. I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's like, I quit my job. I was at the spring factory.
But like, you know what? I guess if you're working at the spring factory, the penthouse is gonna rep you. I get it.
I mean, just sell.
She's gonna have to
sell
post
feet
nude.
pics, dude. Just sell your feet pics. Be a normal person. John,
Be a normal person and get on OnlyFans.
John, would you be upset if your wife wanted to sell pictures of her feet on the internet?
Yeah, would you be upset if your wife wanted to sell pictures of her feet?
The caveat
or you're like, how much are they going for?
Yeah, the caveat is it doesn't have to be her face. I said her feet.
How much are we talking?
I mean, any kind of. I really don't care if as long as her face isn't on it. Those could be anybody's.
So if she was
Not
getting
getting
$100 per post for her feet, you'd be like, yeah, go do that.
I mean, if you did a post every day, $700 a week.
You're like, I'm just doing the math here. That's a pretty nice extra chunk of change.
Is.
Dude, do I ever? Oh my God, it's killing me.
So yeah, if there's no face, they don't know whose feet that is. They're just there for the feet. The toes, baby. One of my favorite lines.
Don't all feet look relatively the same? Nah. I guess.
I mean, I've seen some bad ones. I don't know.
We should get someone who's like really into feet on this show, and then talk to them about like, so what specifically, like, why are you into it? And then just let them go. Different kind of pod, but it might be interesting.
Should we put a Craigslist? Maybe we can get a Craigslist ad. That would be our best bet.
Maybe we'll get like 1 million people being like, "Yes, yes, please let me come on your pod and talk about."
John, a live panel.
Oh God, it could go off the rails really fast.
Yeah, kind of like this.
Yeah.
All right, John. We ready?
Ready, dude.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching.
Tuah.
Tuah.